Welcome to the Procurement Software Podcast, where we aim to educate and inspire you about how technology is changing and shaping our profession. The truth is, there's never been a more exciting time to be in procurement, but only if you're one of those organizations that's embracing the change and driving new developments. And this podcast is all about giving you the tools to help you get there. So buckle up and let's get right into this week's show. Yes, hey there and welcome. My name is James. I am your host of the Procurement Software Podcast. Great to have you with us. We are the only podcast that focuses 100% on digital procurement with the content that we put out. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that you may have heard of. We may have even been using some applications that tackle this. Topic for today's podcast is no-code procurement. When does it still make sense to make versus buy your procurement technology? Now, this may be a bit of a strange topic, especially when you consider all of the venture capital money that has gone into developing and growing procurement technology applications over the years. And indeed, if you'd have asked me this question just a couple of years ago, I would have said you would be an absolute fool to consider making your own procurement tech rather than just going out and buying a procurement tech application that is out there on the marketplace. But now that I say that, the no-code movement has been growing and gaining momentum. And, on the one hand, I certainly wouldn't recommend making a very complex application because there is plenty of technology out there that has lots of features out there and that can really take your procurement to the next level. But where I think this now is gaining credibility is if you've got a bespoke requirement and you want to build something that's specific to your organization, if it's a fairly simple thing that you need to build, you no longer now need to be able to write lines of code to be able to do that, because there are plenty of generic, not even built for procurement, but generic no-code apps and tools and application builders out there now that even if you don't know how to code, you can build pretty robust use cases using these platforms. And very essence of that as an example is Procurement Software.site. If you go to app.procurementsoftware.site, where you can search and filter over 440 different procurement technology apps according to the different search criteria that you want to look for. A little bit of a secret, that platform is built using entirely no-code applications. Backend of the procurement software database is built in Airtable. Airtable is a no-code database application that is a generic application used across a wide number of use cases. But what brings that into its own is the no-code front end that we use as the front end of the website, what you see as the user. And that's using a platform called Softer. Now, I'm not giving away the keys to the kingdom in telling you that. What I'm really trying to do here is to show you that something that is very complex in terms of all of the data that we've got housed in our procurement technology database can be presented in a really nice looking front end and make it easy from a UX perspective for the user to be able to search and filter what they're looking for without having to go into the back-end database. And that technology stack that we're using can be applied to a number of different use cases, actually. And I mean, that's not the only no-code combo that can be used. There are a number of different applications that can be used and matched together to give you what you need. But in today's episode, I just wanted to give a few examples of where, especially if you're a fairly small procurement team or you have a pretty simple application that you want to build, that it might actually make sense to consider using one of these generic no-code tools instead of going out and purchasing a specific procurement technology app. So before we do, let's tackle the elephant in the room, which is nowadays generative AI or large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini can do a lot of tasks that previously would have required some specialist software to do. I'm going to use contract management here as a great example. So you can now, assuming that your company compliance and data policies allow you to do it, I would definitely first, but you could upload a contract or indeed any document for that matter into something like ChatGPT and then prompt it to say, summarize this contract and pass all of the important clauses and give me a 1 or 2 page executive summary of everything that I should be aware of in this contract without having to read through to your 50-page document in some cases. So these large language model applications have made that possible, which previously would have been impossible. You would have needed to have gone out and purchased quite an expensive contract management application to be able to do that. So that's just one example. There are many other examples. So I'm very cognizant that has made a lot of previously inaccessible functionality. If you had perhaps a very small budget to spend on procurement technology, that's now made that available. But I'm going to look at 7 specific examples of where you could perhaps use no-code generic tools to be able to build simple but useful and effective applications that can help to 10x your procurement productivity through some simple digitalisation, automation, and data agri opportunities. So let's get started. Number 1, where you could use no-code procurement tools would be to build a savings and performance management application. So if you want to build a simple savings and performance management tracker and you want to take it to the next level and not just use Excel for all of its problems that can bring, especially around human error of the data that's being ingested into there with some of the formulas that may be written, you could build a pretty simple savings and performance management tool using a no-code application like Airtable and then just build a dashboard or a front end onto it to make it user-friendly for the end user to be able to enter and track projects. The beauty of that is that you can have multiple users doing it, and the front end and the accessibility is going to be a lot nicer than trying to do it on something like SharePoint site. Likewise, on a similar vein, you could also bring project collaboration tool into one of these tools. So you could build a no-code project collaboration Kanban type dashboard in terms of tracking progress. You could bring Kanban or Gantt type views into this application. And again, don't have to write a single word of code to be able to use that and build something that's pretty effective and can have a user-friendly front end to be able to enter and track projects across different departments and different stakeholders. And even you can get suppliers on there too if you perhaps don't want to give them access to your SharePoint environment or to have an Excel file that's being tracked on a shared drive. If you've got a no-code application that can be used to do project collaboration tracking, that's another great case that can then be the triangle between procurement, suppliers, and stakeholders that can be managing and tracking progress on projects all in one space. The third example that I wanted to offer here, and this one's a massive one in every organization, and this one would probably be the one that I would do first. So if you're interested actually and want to have a chat to me about how you could do this, reach out and I'd love to be able to build you a minimum viable product just to show you how this can work. I'm a real evangelist about how this specific use case could be, and that is vendor onboarding. We've all been there, haven't we, using email or Word documents or Excel files to be able to get vendor master data from new suppliers that you need to add to your database. Usually a ping pong between emails and then the finance team or the master data team to get that updated into SAP or whatever ERP system that you're using. Instead of doing that, so simple, be able to build a vendor onboarding tool in Jotform would be the example that I'm thinking of, but there are plenty of others where you could just build a pretty simple intake form for vendors to be able to go in and upload all of their certifications, all of their data, and then for you to have a front-end interface that enables you, the stakeholders, finance team, and the supplier to be able to track the progress of that vendor application so as everyone can see at any given time what the bottleneck is that's preventing that vendor from being added into the system. On a similar vein to vendor onboarding, you've also got a no-code case study that could be used for pretty simple intake requirements. Now, I'm not thinking in an enterprise solution where you need a more complex intake management system. I'm thinking more here for small procurement teams. So if you're a procurement team of just a couple of people, or maybe you're even a lone ranger coming into procurement and you want to offer a simple intake application to be able to give to your stakeholders, just so as they can fill out a pretty basic requisition requirement of what it is that they want to buy. So you could even have two different forms, but if they've already got a quotation for something, and then you just want them to submit that to be able to generate a purchase order in the system. Or if it's a more generic, I want to buy something, but I don't really know how to type of form, you can also have that side by side as well that can guide them to who they need to speak to or what they need to then do to enable them to purchase something. Again, you can build that as kind of a modular based form construction form, a little bit like Typeform or Jotform or any one of these form builders that can be used on the front end, completely no code, that can then that can then forward on that form to whoever it needs to go to, depending on the conditional logic that you're building in there around what it is that person needs to buy and who needs to then action that form when it comes in. Another great case for using no-code applications is a simple contracts repository. Again, similar to vendor onboarding, I think this is one that has a really fast ROI and has a multitude of use cases. You could even use it for sales contracts as well as purchasing contracts, just to be able to get that business case signed off by your CFO. Contracts database is a really, really easy one and one that delivers impact very, very quickly. With no-code tools, you can also build in features such as something that sends push notification maybe 30 or 60 days before the contract is due to expire. And you can have all of your contracts then with a really nice looking front end type of grid display and with a search functionality and a tag or a filter functionality. So as if you're looking for, professional services contracts, for example, or IT contracts, you can just filter on that specific tag. So if you've got a stakeholder that just wants to look at all of the contracts that affect their department or their budget, you can do that too. Another one actually that I would love to do a case study for. So if you're listening to this and you're a pretty small procurement team and you want to build a simple but very functional and quick ROI contracts repository database, then let me know. I'd love to have a chat with you and let's see if we can build a minimum product for you to take your contract repository outside of SharePoint or Excel or shared folders and onto a more user-friendly, nice-looking front end. Similar to contract repositories, we can also have a contract collaboration tool using no-code tools. I'm thinking here that if you've got multiple stakeholders or if you've maybe got legal and the supplier and you as the procurement person that want to collaborate in real time, uploading contracts and having something like a change tracker that tells you who changed what and to date and timestamp it. You can do that in a no-code tool as well, just to be able to track changes in a more user-friendly way than just using Microsoft Word. I do think the track changes feature in Microsoft Word is absolutely horrible. I hate using it. And putting that into a no-code application. You could even use a Word file, but then you could have something that tracks exactly what's being changed and who was the last person to change it, and just really have a track log in a single source of truth in a more user-friendly front end to be able to do that. And then finally, the seventh one that I had after my quick brainstorm when I was preparing to do this podcast episode is to have a procurement learning and resource hub, kind of like a nicer looking intranet portal in one of these no-code platforms. And again, it's really just about building a nice looking dashboard that can sit there with all of the data behind it. So if you've got processes, policies, training documents, internal courses, maybe for users. You can bring that into one central hub and use the no-code technology to just make that look nicer than it would on SharePoint, and just make uploading, adding, and changing documents a lot easier as well, and give it a place where it's much easier to find and filter through all of that documentation. So they are 7 examples of how you can use completely generic no-code tools that are available for all different sorts of use cases out there in the public domain, and to be able to specify those for particular use cases within procurement, and how we can use those simple apps to deliver value quickly and to build a minimum viable product without you having to go out and sign a multi-year contract with a specialist procurement SaaS vendor. Indeed, I'm a big advocate best of breed procurement technology. I certainly don't think this is going to completely replace the need for you to have best of breed procurement tools. But if you're perhaps a little bit constrained by apathy or lack of budget, and you want to get a minimum viable product out there and get people using it to get proof of concept, this is a particularly great way that you can do that quickly, easily, and cost effectively without having to pay a recurring monthly fee to a procurement tech company. We actually are building apps for our own business here at procurementsoftware.site that uses these tools, as I mentioned. So if you're keen on any of these use cases and you'd like to explore a little bit more, or you've maybe been looking for a piece of procurement tech to solve one of these specific problems and haven't hit the nail on the head in terms of someone that does it at the price point that you're willing to pay, drop me a message. Love to hear from you. I want to build up a bit of a library of use cases here, and perhaps build this as a bit of a side business within the ecosystem that we operate in. So I hope this has given you a little bit of inspiration around how you can use these no-code affordable tools to build some basic digitalized use cases, and hope it's given you some food for thought around how you can take that to the next level. Thank you very much for listening. I realize that there are a bunch of procurement podcasts out there. I like to think that we bring something a little bit different in focusing just on procurement technology and digitalization with our podcast. If you like what we're bringing, then please give us a follow on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It does, I think, help us to reach more people and sort of climb up the listings of procurement podcasts. So give us a follow, or if you can be even more generous with your time, give us a review in one of those platforms. That really would help us to move the needle. And we will catch you same time again next week. Until then, wherever you are in the world, bye for now.